Hello, insiders, and welcome to this new episode of the EU Bubble Insider. Our guest today is Dr. Antonios Nestoras, Deputy Executive Director of the European Liberal Forum. Antonios, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. Welcome.
Likewise, Christoph. Thank you very much for the invitation, and thanks to the audience for taking the time to listen and watch the podcast.
Let's start with explaining our audience a little bit about your role as the Deputy Director of European Liberal Forum. I think most of the listeners will know what ELF is, but what it is actually you do, if you could just give us an overview of your job.
Yeah, with pleasure. My role as Deputy Director is, my main focus is on policy and policy research and impact. This involves exploring and understanding various policy areas that are crucial for EU politics, like tech policy, security, sustainability. So my role is to steer our research efforts in directions that are both insightful and impactful for EU policymaking. We're constantly analyzing how current policies are shaping up across Europe, and we're figuring out ways to contribute positively to these discussions. So my responsibility is to ensure in a way that our research is not just academic and theoretical, but also practical and useful for policymakers, stakeholders, and the general public when they're interested. So a big part of my job is to bridge the gap between research and real-world applications in the policy world. It's about taking complex policy matters, and you know that in today's world it can be very complicated, these policy matters, and to translate them into understandable and actionable insights for the policymakers. And in this context, we engage with a wide range of audiences, ensuring that the work that we do resonates and drives forward the liberal agenda in a meaningful way here in Brussels, but also in the capital. So, in essence, my role as Deputy Director is a blend of being a researcher that I have experience from, a strategist, but also a communicator of EU policies. It's about keeping a pulse on the political landscape here in Brussels, but the whole Europe, and ensuring that ELF remains a key player in shaping liberal policies, agendas, and thoughts.
And how much does it help in your role that you have, aside from being the director at ELF, you have experience being a researcher and an academic teacher. So you have this academic background. How much does it help? How much does it influence the way you are able to perform your work at ELF?
It helps a lot because, as I said, a big part of my job is to bridge the gap between research, academic research, and policymaking. And this is not as simple as it sounds, because these are two different worlds. They're doing two different tasks or functions in the society, and they have different timings. So academic research takes a lot of time, goes through rigorous peer review processes, drafts after drafts after drafts, whereas policymaking is fast and furious sometimes, So the fact that I have been in both these worlds and I can implement best practices from both of these worlds is a big advantage when it comes to working in a think tank, especially if it is a political think tank like ELF.
So maybe you could share some actual best practices for balancing this academic rigor that requires a lot of time and this practical political practicality of the work that has to be done within a think tank?
Sure. Okay, let's take a best practice that I've introduced at ELF. Perhaps it's been implemented elsewhere, I don't know. But definitely what we do in ELF is to have a sort of a peer review process for all our publications. Similar to the one that they do in academic research, but not as time consuming as that one. So before we publish anything at all at the European Liberal Forum, first we will send it to our peers, and our peers may be policymakers or officials. It could be stakeholders, from the civil society or from relevant industries, and they will provide feedback. They will provide the reviews of our publications, and then we will act upon this feedback to improve the publication and make it more relevant, make it more clear, make it more accurate. That's also very important. So this is something that I took from the academic research and introduced into the policy research. But it doesn't take the same time, because if it took the same time, the publications that we would put out there would be not relevant anymore after publication. We have to make sure that.
So how long does it take to get a publication ready at ELF? Usually,
Depending on the length, it could take from a few weeks to a couple of months. This is fast track for academic research, but it's necessary, as I said, because otherwise the topic will already be not in the political agenda anymore. And then one other thing that needs to be done when you're in the policy research field and the think tank world is that you cannot just publish this research. So you need to take it to make it known actively to the people that matters, the policymakers. So it's not just fire and forget, but then after publication, you have to take this and explain it and present it and communicate it in an efficient way to the policymakers in order for the policy research to have an impact. And that's why I said big part of my work, or my main focus, is on policy research, but also impact. In a way, we want the think tank to be not just a think tank, but a think and do tank.
This is actually a very important point that you brought up. Apart from just publishing, you need to make sure that the work you did reached the right stakeholders, the people that it's meant to be read by. So I want to ask, how do you have a specific process to review the efficiency of the outreach? How do you know if the publication of a position paper, of a report, was successful?
Yeah, that's a very important question, but I have to say that think tank impact is notoriously difficult to define. There's a whole literature on the subject. There are rankings of think tanks and all that. But I guess that the short answer is that we measure success through a combination of tools, a combination of policy influence. If this research that we have published is adopted by our political family, for example, or officially by the Commission or by the Parliament, engagement metrics, I would say, like participation in events and the publications reach, downloads, the readers of the publications and so on. But also something very important is feedback from the stakeholders. So we always ask our stakeholders, our political partners and allies, but also the community of researchers and other stakeholders that work with us, feedback on our publications and our events and so on. So, and also we evaluate the adoption of our ideas in policymaking and the extent of discourse change within our thematic areas. But this is, this is difficult to measure. It's not like, it's not sales, obviously. It's not votes, where you can actually measure the success of a political party or not. And it's, as I said in the beginning, difficult to define, notoriously difficult to define. But through this combination of metrics, I believe that you can get a very good idea about your impact and your influence on the public debates.
Antonios, the academic world focuses mostly on quality, but the quantity of publication also matters. How does that look in the think tank world? How do you balance the need for a specific number of publications, or also maybe the ambition to publish more with the available, of course, resources and budgets and time? What is the good way to find the balance between quality and quantity in terms of communication of your research work?
It's a real problem, Christoph, yes. And it's not only policy-related publications. It's the same. If you think about it, in the modern world with the internet and all that, it's the same with music. It's the same with videos, and other forms of writing, isn't it? I really don't have a ready-made answer for this. I usually go with my instinct when it comes to selecting publications, topics, resources, and so on. But of course, we also listen to the news cycle, the policy cycle, and our political partners and stakeholders. But you cannot really aim for quantity these days. You cannot cover all topics. You cannot publish unlimited papers or studies, and even if you do, they won't have the readership or the audience that you really want. So I guess a very good rule of thumb here is to not to aim for quantity, but to aim for quality. Also, not only in the number of the publications, because you have limited resources and budgets, but also in the number of the audience or the readership. Your writing needs to aim for the people that matter, as I said, not for the big readership numbers. At the end of the day, for me, it doesn't make a big difference if the publication was read by 1,000 people, if it was not read by the 10 people that will actually take a decision on the topic of the publication, of the policy paper, or the study, or the journal that we have. So it's a matter of making sure, and that's why this also links back to the impact and making sure that we have an impact and communicate the messages. It's a matter of taking this publication to the right people, whether that is inside the parliament or inside the commission or inside the member state governments or other think tanks as well, in order to create alliances and advocate for the same goal.
I think that's a very important point you're making, because it shows how different policy communications in the EU bubble is from any other communications on marketing activities you may encounter in the broad marketing industry. It's the targeting is so specific that sometimes you really target 10 people instead of a broader group.
Yeah, exactly.
But then, if you want to target those specific people, the lawmakers, let's say, with your publication, with your podcast, they have a big line of people trying to deliver content that will be interesting for them. And my question would be, if you maybe have something like a checklist of the most important things that determine good policy content. that make sure that you produce a podcast or policy paper that just people want to listen to, that people want to read, the right people?
I won't give you a list. I will give you only one, and that's to be logical and evidence based. Policy related content needs to be logical and evidence based, backing arguments with solid research and data, because we have too much ideology going into policy making these days. So we don't have to add. We don't have to add. There's too much ideology going into policy making. And if you are a think tank, please try to avoid it as much as possible. It will be appreciated. We're not a political party. We're not an ideological institution. Of course, we are looking at things from a liberal perspective, but in order to do that, you have to be at the same time both logical and evidence based. We have a mission to contribute to the European public sphere and the debate surrounding EU policies. And it is my firm belief that this is not the best, but also the only way to contribute, by providing solid arguments, evidence based, supported by data, in order to improve the debate. Because otherwise, the debate is, as I said, too much ideology going into that.
There is a lot of ideology going around, but there is also a lot of populism. And preparing to our conversation, I found that one of the courses you teach your students is called Post-Truth Politics and the Rise of Populism. I wanted to ask you a question regarding this course. What is the message you share with your students? Is there any hope in dealing with this flood of fake news, of populism and ideology in politics?
Well, that's a good question. My message to the students while teaching the course, which I'm not teaching anymore, but my message was that even the academic literature on populism is diverse and unsettled. It's unsettled. Some scholars view it as a pathology that undermines democratic principles, and other scholars see it as a necessary corrective, a way, in other words, a way to voice the concerns of the underrepresented or the marginalized people. And additionally, there's a debate over whether populism is an ideology or it's just a style of communication and political performance. So again, the literature is unsettled. So while the question of how to deal with the rise of populism and the flood of fake news and so on and so forth remains open and subject to debate, my focus in the course was to empower students to understand the complexities, the nuances of the literature first and foremost, but by extent also of the world, and to form their own well-reasoned perspectives on the matter. And in my humble opinion, that is the only hope of dealing with anything, really. Like you said, the flood of populism and fake news and disinformation and misinformation, you cannot really stop it. It has always been there. It's still here. It's just a little bit augmented by the modern information and communication technology, but it's always been there. It will always be there. The only thing that we can do is educating our youth, and not only, to be able to shift through the ocean of information and data out there, and to identify the real arguments, the solid arguments, the evidence, and in this way to make their own well-reasoned, to create their own well-reasoned opinions and act upon it, because that's also very, very important. Back then and today, if you ask me, that's the only hope for me.
So for politicians who are not happy about the rise of populism, the focus they something they should focus on is the education policy of young people. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now I would like to get back a little bit to understanding the shifts in your career, because it's interesting when I look at your LinkedIn profile to see that you have the mix of this academic and this practical EU bubble research background. And I wanted to ask, for those who are entering their careers, just launching their careers in the EU bubble, and would like to find some inspiration in what you already achieved. What were the key turning points, the moments that have shaped your career the most? If you would look back at what brought you to where you are today.
The crisis. That's that's the not one crisis, many crises. That's the easy answer, I guess. Well, what I want to say is that um, my career trajectory and all the decisions that I've made have been influenced largely by the turbulent times that we are living through, right? Like everyone else. I arrived in Brussels just a few months before the Greek crisis hit, which, looking back, was a key turning point in itself because it gave me a head start compared to the major immigration wave from Greece to Brussels and in general to Europe around 2010 and 2011. So I was here before the major immigration wave, and I was here in Brussels during the crisis, which was a time of in, intense and unprecedented interest in Greek politics. And being Greek myself, I had this particular perspective that was in very high demand at the time. So in reality, I have to confess that this situation, so basically the crisis, helped me land my first job with the ALDE group, what the Renew group was called back then. And I was lucky and I was at the right place at the right time. But I also had the background, which played a significant role in just staying in Brussels because I came only for an internship in 6 months. But a lot of people, that's nothing new, a lot of people have the same trajectory. And another key decision, apart from luck and the crisis, was the fact that I chose to remain in the liberal family, the ALDE family, despite the fact that liberals in Greece haven't had much success, as you know, in parliamentary elections. And this choice led me through various roles, from an intern to assistant, political assistant, for a parliamentary assistant, to a policy advisor, then head of unit, and now as a deputy director. And each stage was different and brought different challenges and learning experiences, but it was consistency and devotion that kept me going. So I would say luck, the crisis, like adapting, but also consistency and devotion. But as you mentioned, and that's if I can say, I also found it interesting that I took a break from politics, EU policy and politics, to complete my PhD and teach at the university. And this time away from the political arena gave me a sort of a hybrid profile, I would say, blending, as you mentioned, academic research with policy experience. And again, as luck would have it, this combination was exactly what was needed when ELF decided to establish a policy research unit. So it was like all my experiences had converged to prepare me for this role, which I've been enjoying tremendously for more than 3 years now. So, in a nutshell, Christoph, lots of crisis, a little bit of luck, and constantly learning and adapting to these turbulent times that we live in.
So, if I could just share one takeaway from what you said, is that if you're launching your career, maybe it's good to really look at your what you already bring to the table, even as a young person. Maybe the languages you speak, maybe the specific part of Europe you come from, and you understand some specific background you have that may already at the start of your career make you relevant for some organization you would be joining. Is that something you would say is important?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Identify what makes you special even when you enter the labor market, even at your first post, at your first job, at your first contract. Try to identify what makes you special, what unique you can bring on the table in the organization that you're applying to, um, and deliver, be consistent, adapt. Of course, it's not a matter of this is who I am and nothing changes. They have to adapt, but they have to have a goal, a direction, and that's the specialty, the expertise, um, that they want to deliver for the labor market, for the organizations that they want to work for.
I think this is really good advice because it helps young people, even in the first day of their careers, find something that makes them stand out among the many applications that might be sent in for a specific job. Antonios, I would like to speak also about the European Liberal Forum,
Sure.
and more specifically about how it's different from any other think tank, because the European Liberal Forum is a political think tank, which means that it's associated with a political party, or in this case, better said, a political family. How does that work in practice? How much dependence, support do you get on daily basis from the politicians, from the party?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. ELF isn't just a think tank, but a political think tank, one closely tied to a political family. And what a diverse family it is. We are very particular because we have green liberals, we have social liberals, we have centrists, we have conservative liberals, you name it. And this diversity makes our work environment more similar, as I always say, uh, like a small parliament within the larger European Parliament, in a way, because no issue is straightforward, and reaching common positions isn't always the default mode. So this necessitates, in a way, constant discussion and debate between different players and stakeholders within the family, which I have to say, for a political scientist like myself, is endlessly fascinating. Every day is almost every day is fascinating. And in practical terms, this diversity and the ongoing debates within the family mean that as a think tank, we have considerable freedom to explore new and sometimes controversial ideas. We aren't confined to a single rigid, as I said, ideological viewpoint, but instead we have the opportunity to really test a wide array of perspectives and viewpoints. And this dynamic is incredibly enriching for policy research and development. So in terms of dependence and support, and in order to answer to your original question, I'd say it's a balanced relationship. Yes, we are aligned with a political family, but within that, there's a high degree of independence. And this arrangement, let's say, allows us to contribute meaningfully to the policy debates within our family, despite of or thanks to a broad spectrum of viewpoints and a deeply democratic process within the liberal family.
And where do most of the time ideas that you work on come from? Is it inspired by the political family, by politicians asking you guys, you have to work on this, or is it internal? Do you guys figure it out yourselves, or maybe some other? What are the sources of ideas to work on for a political think tank like ELF?
Discussions. We forget about it sometimes. The main source of ideas is discussions. We discuss with each other, we discuss with our in-house experts, we discuss with our members, we discuss with our board, we discuss with our MEPs, we discuss with our party. There is constantly some sort of a debate going on. And this is where or how we develop our ideas and our policy recommendations. We're not afraid to test them, as I said. We're not afraid to sometimes take controversial positions, but we are always approaching them with an open mind and with a lot of discussions with our stakeholders. Not to forget, as I said, the civil society and the corporate stakeholders. We are trying to build a community. That's our number one goal, to build a community of people who are passionate about a certain topic. AI, for example, artificial intelligence. We have built a community of people who are actually passionate about it. Enlargement. We have built a community of people who are actually passionate about enlargement. They want to improve the process. They want to speed up the enlargement of the European Union. And so we sit together in working groups, in events, in conferences, and we discuss, and we honestly trying to find better ways to do things. So it revolves about discussions that happen. These ideas revolve around discussions that happen within our family, but also the greater or wider community of scholars, experts, policymakers, and other people that we are trying to create.
So my right away, my takeaway from here, because that community also involves business and lobbyists and a number of organizations trying to advocate for their causes in the EU bubble, is it right to say that the best way to inspire people at a political think tank to include some point of view in their research, in their analysis, is to take part in the debates? If you are a lobbyist, an NGO, or any other group that is trying to advocate for something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're not afraid to talk with anyone. As I said, we will talk to the civil society, we will talk to the NGOs, but we will also talk to the industries and the corporate stakeholders. And I can tell you that they are equally willing to participate in these debates. It's not only the civil society that wants to participate in this and influence these debates, or we can put it in the other way around too. It's not only the industry that wants to influence the debates, it's also the civil society. And so if we are truly, if we want to be truly consistent with our democratic principles, we have to talk with everyone. We cannot exclude people from our community. We know that everyone comes with a bias. We know that everyone comes with an agenda or an interest, whether it is an industry interest or whether it is a philosophical interest in the discussion. But everyone is welcome to join the community. to discuss the things that we are passionate about and to help us develop policy recommendations, help us develop ways to do things better.
Now, looking beyond just the Brussels part of the EU bubble, the European Liberal Forum is consists also of if this is the right way to express it, 51 member organizations. What does such a network give you? How does it work, and how do you leverage such an impressive network to be more efficient in the work you do?
It's European Liberal Forum is a member-driven organization, and I'm very glad that you mentioned it because so far we have talked about being a political foundation for affiliated with the ALDE party, being a think tank, trying to demonstrate liberal thought leadership, and that's the third dimension that we have. And in many respects, the first and foremost dimension that we have, that we are an member-driven organization. We have 54 member organizations across Europe, both inside and outside of the EU. And this is a great advantage when it comes to a think tank, especially a European think tank. Yeah, definitely so for a European think tank, because this network offers us a vast pool of diverse perspectives and expertise on every or almost every single topic. And in order to leverage the power of the network, as I always say in our internal meetings, we have to collaborate on research, on sharing best practices, on collectively or making collective efforts to amplify our impact across Europe. And the unique advantage or added value that the network brings to a Brussels-based think tank is that it gives us the perspective of the member state, the national perspective, the regional perspective, the local perspective, even. So this greatly enriches our understanding of regional particularities and it helps us in crafting more effective and inclusive policies. It's a real advantage for a European think tank to have outreach to the member states, because it brings back to Brussels what is sometimes ignored, and that's as I said, the regional, the local, and the national particularities.
So maybe to help our listeners and viewers to understand how the work of a think tank really looks like, could we take a specific topic? Like, let's say, for example, the recently very hot topic in Brussels, the EU accession. What is the work you have done around that? How long did it take, or maybe you're in the middle of it? Could you share some specifics of how work gets done in a political think tank?
Sure. As I mentioned, we have a community of people who are really passionate about European enlargement, and we believe it's a strategic geopolitical imperative for Europe to expand to the neighborhood. And so we're trying to improve the process because we have seen that it's been stagnating for a while. So our work centers, our mission or our job as we saw it was to find a concept that would help us reignite the enlargement process, not only in Brussels, mind you, but also in the candidate countries. Everybody admitted a couple of years ago that the enlargement process was at a standstill, and we strongly felt, we still believe that we have to rethink our approach. And so our work centers around the concept of the so-called staged integration, which is not a complicated concept at all. It's really a matter of changing the approach and slightly changing the methodology of European enlargement. I'm not going to go into the details, but very simply to say that instead of spending 10 or 20 years of reforming everything and implementing the EU acquis into national legislation before the candidate country can become a member of the European Union. The concept of states integration suggests that is better if after the closing of some clusters of negotiations, then the candidate country gets some of the benefits of membership before it is actually a full member. The full membership is still the goal, the final goal, but there are stages in between where the candidate country and the people of the candidate country can benefit from membership. And it can be really anything. That's up for discussion. But it can be, access to the single market or the labor market or the Schengen area or whatever the stages in between. But the idea and the logic is that you don't have to wait for 20 years before you actually receive something in return for all the reforms that you have to go through as a candidate country. Now, for the actual work, its first step is publications, policy papers and studies. So we publish research on the subject. We provided detailed analysis of where the enlargement process is and where it should go. And we proposed and analyzed also this staged approach, which, just a very small parenthesis as a disclaimer, it's not a concept that we have invented. It's not new. It's something that we adopted, and we decided that this is a good idea, and we should advocate for this. So after the publications, we've taken our ideas directly at the heart of the European decision making. We have presented our research, our findings, and our proposals inside the European Parliament. We engaged with our MEPs, but also with representatives and ambassadors from candidate and even potential candidate countries. We've initiated a roadshow that we took this research directly to the regions that are under enlargement. So we have a states integration roadshow in the Western Balkan countries. We had 3 stops this year, and we're planning more stops next year, and also to extend it to the Eastern Partnership countries, not just the Western Balkans. So apart from the publications, as I said, and I have repeated throughout the podcast, our work also involves advocating our ideas to local political actors, but also European political actors, engaging in dialogue and discussing these ideas. It's a hands-on approach to ensure that our research is grounded on the reality of the regions, on evidence, on data, and on solid argumentation. So this work on enlargement and the states integration approach, I think it's a clear example of how our work doesn't involve only theoretical research and publications, but active, hands-on approach and advocacy to the players that are mostly concerned with the issue.
I see one more takeaway from this case that you just explained, and that would be to show actually the citizens who will be wondering, but why we actually need political think tanks. Enlargement has been done before. There is a procedure. Why not repeat it? So I would say that what you just explained shows that the role of a think tank is not just to show how things are done, but how to do them better, how to guide politicians on how they can improve something that may be working, but it could be working better to benefit everyone in a fast changing world.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's not easy to create a European public sphere. And I'm not saying that all we need is think tanks and people discussing ideas and policy recommendations and so on. But this is a big part of it. Democracy is not just elections, you know. Democracy is a range of processes that take place on different levels of the political and the public debate. Yeah, you need, of course, you need the media, you need the people that take the policy decisions. You need elections, you need the parliament, you need the government, but you also need civil society. You need active and responsible industrial stakeholders, socially responsible industrial stakeholders. But you also need think tanks, you know, scholars, nerds, if you want, that are passionate about a single or a few topics, and they're willing to discuss about it every day or every month or every year in order to find better ways of doing things. You know, so it's a part, it's a piece of a bigger puzzle of creating the European public sphere.
Exactly. There is this expression that I very much like to use when I'm stuck with thinking about something, and that is to reframe the picture, to just look at something that is known and well known, sometimes too well known, from a slightly different perspective. And I think this is one of the parts where think tanks are really helpful. So as we are recording this podcast almost in the end of 2003, I would like to ask you to reflect a little bit on the coming year, which in the world of a political think tank is a very specific one. It's an election year, determining a lot about the way how you and your team will work. So, what are your expectations regarding 2004? What are your plans, and how will it this year? For those who don't know, how this year will be different for you guys because of the elections?
Yeah, there's an election year ahead, and that changes a lot of things. Next year is going to be slightly different compared to the other years, and the key difference is, apart from the election, that will be, or because of the elections, will be witnessing the formation of a new political landscape here in Brussels. A new European Parliament and eventually a new European Commission. And this isn't just a routine change in personnel, especially next year. It's an agenda setting period, I would call it. Yeah, it's an agenda setting period. The composition, what it means is that the composition of the new parliament and the commission will be indicative of the legislative priorities for the next 5 years. And so our work next year will be also to have a meaningful influence on these priorities. And we want to ensure that the policies and the issues that we care about will be at the forefront of the EU's agenda. Now, there are ways to do that through the political family and so on. We will continue, of course, our work in the key topics that we are conducting research and advocacy on. But next year will involve a lot of strategic engagement as well. So we'll be monitoring the political outcomes of the elections in the hope that we understand how this might impact our work. As I said, the composition of the parliament, the new commission, and so on, in order to be able to adapt and respond to the new agenda, the new challenges, or the new priorities as they will arise next year. So, in summary, I would say while our core focus is policy research, and it will remain, the next year will be different will be more strategic in trying to anticipate and influence the agenda of EU policymaking for the next 5 years.
And it will be a very busy year, of course, because it has sort of consist of two parts that are very different in their dynamics. One is the preparation and anticipation of what is to come. But then the second part of the year will be actually getting to know the newly elected MEPs and figuring out what is the most relevant work to be done.
Absolutely, it's a two-staged election process. It's the campaign before the elections, but my feeling and my anticipation is that there's going to be a campaign also after the elections. We will have, as usually, we will have a big turnover in the European Parliament. So perhaps 50% of the MEPs are going to be new, and it's not entirely given which parliamentary group they're going to join. So there's going to be also a campaign after the elections in order to get to the final composition of the parliamentary groups in the EP.
So to put it short, for political nerds, this will be a super exciting year to follow. And for political scientists. Antonios, I usually like to finish my interviews with a question that is not so much related to the professional part of your job, but probably sometimes for some even more important, and that is about the work-life balance and living a healthy, happy life. When I say work-life balance, what comes to your mind? Is this something that you have a good grasp of? Do you have some tips to share with the EU Bubble Insider community?
Your kids will always be more important than your job. That's what I have to say on the matter. I know everyone's situation is different, but maybe you can take that as a rule of thumb. If you have a family and you want to have a work-life balance, yeah, that's it. Your kids will always be more important than your job.
There is this saying that 20 years from now, it's only going to be your kids who will remember that you stay at work late, not your boss, not your colleagues, but your kids will remember.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, I say this from the point of view of someone who has kids. That's why I said everyone's situation is different. But at the end of the day, family is more important. Your partner is more important than your job. Don't forget that. It's a principle that can help you find the right balance there. I don't claim to have the knowledge that I can share with everyone, which is the correct balance, but you need to have some principles like this that will help you find your own balance, your own work-life balance.
Antonios, as a father myself, I couldn't agree more. I could only add that it takes time to figure this out. The younger you are, the probably it's more unclear what are the priorities that you should focus on. But in the end, I have to agree 100% that family and your kids should be the number one priority here. So thank you very much for this as the closing remark of our conversation. And thank you for your time today. Today, our guest was Dr. Antonios Nestoras from the European Liberal Forum. So, Antonios, thank you very much for being with us today. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you, Christoph. It was a pleasure.